and here we go for today's country, and I kind of say what it was yesterday if you've seen the video, but today we're talking about Scotland. So yeah, Scotland is kind of like an old country, thinking about it, considering there's evidence of like occupation in like the Paleolithic era, 10,000 years, like 10,000 BC. And during the Stone Age, where there's like hunter-gatherers there's evidence of hunter-gatherers who wanted to fish wild animals and like gathered fruits, nuts, plants, roots and like shells to eat and all. And then in 3000 BC, the earliest prehistoric tools still found like surviving in Scotland from date around 3000 BC during the Neolithic age in Scotland, and was home to like nomadic hunter-gatherers as well as the first farmers who built the more permanent dwellings. And the remains of domestic and ritual buildings from this time make up the heart of the Neolithic Orkney World Heritage Site. So yeah. And then we jump again a couple of thousand years to 124 AD, where Scotland's recorded history began, with the arrival of the Roman Empire. And despite building like two walls, like Hadrian's Wall to defend the northern border and the Antonine Wall across central Scotland to advance it forward, the Romans never really conquered Caledonia and were unable to defeat like the Caledonians and the Picts. And the Romans eventually withdrew and over time retreated from Britain as a whole. And as much of the 60-kilometre Antonine Wall survives and is a World Heritage Site and is one of the 6 in Scotland since 2004. And during the 9th century AD, 800 on to 899, the Vikings were migrating from Norway and Denmark, crossing the North Sea to settle in Scotland. And Vikings began to settle in the west, and the Picts were forging a new kingdom, the Kingdom of Alba. And in 1040 AD, somewhere around then, there was a fellow called Macbeth who was immortalised by someone a couple of centuries after that called Shakespeare, and is probably one of the well-known early Scottish kings who ruled as King of Alba from 1040 to his death in battle in 1057. Now, in the 12th century, from 1100 onwards, the Kingdom of Alba continued to grow and became like a feudal society. The Treaty of Falaise, signed by William I, ushered in a period of relative peace in Scotland during the reigns of Alexander II and Alexander III. More land was turned over to agriculture, trade with the continent bolstered the economy, and monasteries and abbeys grew and flourished around the country. In 1297, during the Battle of a succession crisis brought unrest in Scotland after the death of Alexander III, when with England's monarch Edward III, who believed he should be recognised as overlord of Scotland, and his troops marched north into bloody sieges of Scotland. And in 1297, Edward's army planned to cross the River Forth at Stirling Bridge, and Scots seized the opportunity to attack the crossing of the River Forth, the Stirling Bridge forcing the English army to retreat. And it was there that one of William Wallace, who earned his place in history books as probably one of the most famous Scottish figures to come out of that kind of era. And then in 1306 and onwards, and unrest continued in the 14th century when Robert the Bruce took the throne and was crowned king and fighting continued up until like 1314 at the Battle of Bannockburn, where Robert and the Bruce and his army defeated Edward II, which was a major turning point in his rule. And in 1320 there was a declaration of Bibliography, which was a letter written in Latin, signed by the Scottish barons and nobles, and was sent to Pope John the 22nd. The declaration proclaimed Scotland status as an independent sovereign state, but the effect was largely symbolic. The powerful declaration remains an important document in the history of Scotland, and really historians believe it kind of inspired the America's founding fathers to write the United States Declaration of Independence. And during the 1400s, it was kind of a renaissance in Scotland, where the cultural, intellectual and artistic movement that took hold in Europe brought significant changes to Scotland within education, intellectual life, literature, art, architecture, music and politics, as they all advanced during the 1400s. And then in 1542, Mary Queen of Scots was born in Linlithgow Palace, and was 6 days old when her father, James V, died, and she was crowned Queen of Scots. And her reign was marked by Catholic-Protestant conflict and civil unrest, and in a period known as the Rough Wooing. England was worried about the possibility of a Catholic plot against her, and Elizabeth I imprisoned Mary, and after 19 years of captivity, she was executed at Fotheringay Castle in Northamptonshire in 1567 at the ripe old age of 44. And from there, his son James VI succeeded to the throne at just 13 months old, after Mary was forced to abdicate. And when Elizabeth I died with no children, James VI succeeded to the English throne and became James I of England and James VI of Scotland, a move that was known as the Union of the Crowns. And in 1707, the Act of Union brought Scotland closer to Britain by creating a single parliament for the United Kingdom of Great Britain at the Palace of Westminster. In 1746, there was a foreigner. The Battle of Culloden was the final rising of Jacobites, and the last battle fought on British soil, as the Jacobites were seen to have been no match to the Hanoverian army, and the battle just lasted over an army, but the whole rebellion was crushed. And shortly after the defeat of the Jacobites at Culloden, a period known as the Highland Clearances began, and a number of laws were introduced to attempt to assimilate the Highlanders, who spoke Gaelic and wearing traditional tartan attire was banned, and clan chiefs have their rights to jurisdiction removed. So yeah, and during the 1750s and onwards, it was seen as an age of enlightenment, and the ideas from philosophers living in Scotland during this age shaped the modern world, as the intellectual movements sought to understand the natural world and the human mind, and ranged across the areas of philosophy, chemistry, geology, engineering, technology, poetry, medicine, economics and history. And figures like Thomas Hobbes, David Hume, Adam Smith, Robert Burn and Sir Walter Scott are still being celebrated for their achievements. And during the 1800s, during the industrial advances and wealth was accumulated from the trade of tobacco, sugar and cotton, bring about the dawn of the urban Scotland at the turn of the 19th century. And the country shifted from a rural setting to an urban setting, and huge towns with big factories and heavy industry took hold, as mining, shipbuilding and textiles were an important part of Scotland's development at the time. And during World War One, the First World War, Scottish soldiers played a significant role, and Glasgow's Clydeside was an important centre during the war as well. And products from the shipyards, steelworks and iron foundries were vital to the war effort. But it goes silent again until 1967, where oil was found in the North Sea as the first, as it was considered to be a major industrial achievement at the time, creating huge supporting industry in Scotland and across the UK to oil made, and UK access to oil made at home for the first time. And during the 1990s, the Scottish culture was projected worldwide, and films like Braveheart and Trainspotting helped to establish Scotland as a cultural powerhouse. And authors, artists and musicians from Scotland were enjoying renewed success, as J.K. Rowling wrote the global phenomenon Harry Potter in Edinburgh. And in 1997, the scientists from the Roslin Institute successfully cloned the first mammal from an adult cell, and would be known as Dolly the Sheep. And in 1999, the Scottish Parliament reconvenes, and there's a call for more devolved powers had been growing for decades, and resulted in a referendum in 1979, and a second referendum was held in September 1997, with a vote delivering greater powers in 1999, as the Scottish Parliament reconvened for the first time in nearly 300 years, ushering in a new era for the Scottish people. And Scottish Parliament building at the foot of the Royal Mile officially opened on the 9th of October 2004. This weekend then Scotland had another referendum relatively recently in 2014, and in the 2012 Edinburgh Agreement was signed by Scotland's First Minister Alex Salmond and then UK Prime Minister David Cameron, and it paved the way for a once-in-a-generation referendum on Scottish independence in 2014 by conferring Scottish Parliament's hold to hold a vote that will be respected by both governments. And when the results came in as people voted on the 18th of September 2014 on the question of whether Scotland should be an independent country, 45% of people voted yes, which were tied up to 1,617,989 people voted yes that Scotland should be independent, but 55 people voted no, which equated to 2,001,926 voted no that they should remain a part of the United Kingdom. So yeah, that's essentially it for the history. Moving on to the language. The Scots language can also be called Lowland Scots, and is a historic language of the people of Lowland Scotland, and while that is closely related to English. The word Valens, which was originated by the Scottish poet Robert Burns, was used for a literary variety of a language, especially that used by writers in the mid-20th century, movement known as the Scottish Renaissance, and Scots is directly descended from Northern English, which displaced Scots Gaelic in portions of Scotland in the 11th and 14th centuries as a consequence of Anglo-Norman rule. And by the 14th century, Northern English had become spoken tongue for many Scottish people in the east and south of the Highlands, with Scottish Gaelic continuing to be used in the southwest, but sometime in the 15th century, the spoken language became known as Scottish, or Scots, a term that was used interchangeably with English, and sometime thereafter. And over the next 2 centuries, the former diverged from Northern English in pronunciation and also in vocabulary, particularly in additions from French, Dutch, Latin and Gaelic. And the earliest written records in Scottish date from the 14th century. And by the 16th century it was later had supplanted Latin as the primary principal literary and record-keeping language in the kingdom. And Scots was steadily Anglicised from the mid-16th century onwards as a result of cultural and ecological dominance of England. It is phonologically distinguished by strong R's, shortened vowels and simplified diphthongs. And yeah, and from there, legends were kind of recorded. The legends of, and there's many of legends as well. There's the legends of the Kelpies, and the mythical Kelpie is a supernatural water horse that is said to haunt Scotland's lochs and lonely rivers. And the Kelpie would appear to victims as a lost dark grey or white pony, but could be identified by its constantly dripping mane, and it would entice people to ride on its back before taken down to a watery grave. Then there were Selkies, as they were mythical creatures that could transform themselves between seal and a human form, and back again. And the legends of the Selkie apparently originated on the Orkney and Shetland Islands, where Selkie is the Scots word for seal, and there's a tale about it as well. As a man found a beautiful female Selkie sunbathing on the beach, and he stole her skin and forced to become his wife and bear his children, only to find out the skin years later and escaped back to the seal form in the sea. And then there's the most famous one, which is the Loch Ness Monster, also known as Nessie, as it's one of Scotland's most famous unsolved mysteries as it's said to be a large dinosaur creature to inhabit Loch Ness in the Scottish Highlands. And the first recorded sighting of Loch Ness Monster was nearly 1,500 years ago, when a giant beast is said to have leaped out of the lake near Inverness and ate a local farmer. And since then the myth of Loch Nessie has been magnified. And in 1934, a London doctor snapped a photograph that seemed to show a dinosaur-looking creature with a long neck emerging from the water. So dozens of sightings have since been claimed. Many have turned out to be hoaxes. And in 2009, a newspaper reader claimed to have spotted Nessie while browsing on a Google Earth satellite photo of Loch Ness. And regardless of the truth, the suggestions of the Loch Ness Monster's existence makes Loch Ness one of Scotland's most popular tourist attractions, with thousands visiting its shores each year hoping to get sight of the elusive monster. There's also Robert the Bruce and the Spider. And there's with the aforementioned Robert the Bruce, who became King of Scotland in 1306, where Edward I of England took immediate action, forcing him into hiding. And according to the legend, at some point while he was on the run, when he was at his lowest ebb, Bruce hid himself in a cave, and he watched a spider spinning a web from one part of the cave to the other, watching the spider try again to build the web before succeeding, as it's said to have inspired Bruce to carry on fighting the English, and he did after the death of Edward I in 1307, and Bruce defeated Edward II's army at Bannockburn in 1314. It's there are a number of caves in southwest Scotland that claim to be the one where Bruce watched the spider. No one is certain which is the authentic cave. Postman's been any incident with the spider ever really happening. Then there's Sawney Bean, the legend of Sawney Bean. And this is one of the most gruesome in Scottish legends and wouldn't be out of place in modern horror movie. And it is unknown whether Alexander Sawney Bean was an actual person or just a creation of Scottish folklore, but there is some intrigue about it, as Sawney Bean was a head of a criminal cannibalistic family in the 15th century during the reign of King James I of Scotland. It is claimed that he, his wife and 46 children and grandchildren killed and fed on over 1,000 people before they were captured and executed. Then there's Wulver, which is kind of like a werewolf in Shetland, that is said to have the body of a man and with a werewolf's head. And it was reported to have left fish on the windowsill of poor families. Then there's Blue Men of Minch, which is blue-skinned men who live in waters between Lewis and mainland Scotland, looking for sailors to drown and boats to sink. And then there's Bee-Nigh of Scotland, Bee-Nigh, which is Scottish Gaelic for washerwoman, and is a Scottish fairy as an omen of that is seen as an omen of death. It is said that she could be found by streams and pools washing the clothes of those who are about to die. So yeah, shortest one today compared to the other two I've done, but yeah. I'll see you all tomorrow where I'll be talking about Ireland. So yeah, I'll see you all very soon.